We're going to hear from 3 projects, one that has taken place, one that is about to take place, and another project which is sort of a universal by Historic England on conservation zones. Looking at national and international remits and also how they work those remits with a strong focus on the local communities and how their projects impact on those communities. So we're first going to welcome Gemma Ptak from Hartlepool Borough Council, who will be talking about the Tall Ships 2023, followed by Bill Griffiths and Pat Poinen from Hadrian's Wall 1900, and then finally Jules Brown from Historic England. We'll be hearing from all the speakers first, and then there will be time for Q&A afterwards. So, Gemma.
Lovely to meet you all. I've apologised to some when I've done a really hard stare at you today because I only know you as a head and shoulders on a Teams call. So it's actually really nice to see people in physical form. Tall Ships, 4th time coming to the region. A wonderful event that I'm going to give you a lot of enthusiasm about, but as well I'm going to give you lots of reflection about how we're learning, going through this process in a very new post-pandemic world, if we're still calling it that. We're still finding our feet and we're still learning. It's very stressful. Just to put it into context, I'm only 21. I used to be 6'5". But we'll give it a whirl, so bear with me. Okay, can you hear me okay? So I'm the Assistant Director. I'm probably doing less of the do, and we've got some wonderful people that I'll try and acknowledge throughout the presentation. But I've got a range of services, leisure, culture, sport, recreation, parks, open spaces, heritage, arts, culture, events, learning, skills, employment. This is why they just rolled me out to come and talk about something. But I've got a beautiful view of the world, so I'm going to try and reflect all of those different things and how we've brought those out through Tall Ships and the work that we're doing. So 6th and the 9th of July, pop it in your diary if you're free. It would be great to see everybody there. Not to patronise. I hope people are quite aware of what the event is, but without being too obvious, a fleet of small and large ships will come into Hartlepool, and we're one of 5 host ports. So that's the journey. The race actually starts on the 29th of June. We're not the race organisers, so that's run by Sail Train International. So they're a national, international charity, and they work right across the world to be able to host tall ships races. We're the 2nd host port, as you can see there, and then they'll have a sail to Norway, back to the Shetlands over in Lerwick, and then back to Norway to finish the race into August. Why are we hosting Tall Ships? This will be one of the things that I probably reflect upon. An event of this size and scale is really interesting, especially for a local authority organisation caught up in politics and communities and everything else we should be doing. But just to put a little bit on that, this is why we're doing the event. We are slowly becoming everything to everybody, and that's been a real challenge throughout doing all of this. But the priority, certainly Sail Train International's priority, is life-changing experiences for young people. I'll talk about our trainee programme as I move through the presentation, but this is about a lasting legacy for young people. So we've got 80 Sail trainees. We did recruit 113, but as with the existing climate and lots of challenges, lots of confidence issues for young people, as well as we've tried to prepare them for what they're going to do. We've got 80 young people, 40 will fly out to Holland and they will sail into Hartlepool, and 40 will get on ships in Hartlepool and they will sail out to Norway and have a life-changing experience. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. Obviously, we want to engage the community, want to bring them on this journey. Again, it's about legacy. What does this mean to people? How do we capitalise on our heritage? We want to raise aspirations. Again, businesses have seen a really difficult time. We want to be able to bring impact to them and have a really positive influence on our economy. We want to talk about sustainability. We've got sustainability policy, really challenging. When this bid was written, the services, the portfolio for culture and heritage didn't sit with me, and there was a line in there that's haunted me ever since that says, "We'll be the greenest tall ships ever delivered." So there's a mild panic when someone went, "Oh, and by the way, we've been successful for tall ships and you've now got that." And I was Mrs. Positive. "Oh, wow, that's really exciting. I love a bit of a challenge. Tall ship sounds really fun." And I'm reading through the bid, and it's that moment of, as Jodie said, I needed a few gin and tonics reading through this. And it was the greenest tall ships ever, and in a very challenging world financially, and really when we didn't have good policy and good understanding of what that meant. So I'll talk a little bit about that journey. And then education, we want this to be really a good opportunity for those that engage with it. Partnerships, absolutely critical to this, and we've got so many people involved. Visitor economy, want to put Hartlepool on the map. We're a little town, 96,000 people on the northeast coast, but we want people to come and visit us for the wonderful things we've got to offer, of which heritage is one of the biggest things that we have to offer. And then we want to tell our story. We're a coastal town, ship industry, maritime heritage is what we are made from. Some of our ships, not to labour the point, but we've got some of the largest Class A ships in the world come in from as far as Indonesia and Uruguay. We've got a wonderful creative programme. This is our music programme as we've announced it so far. We've got some really good musicians. The Whalers are on tour over here, so they're from the US. When we're talking about learning and you start to interact with people from a kind of international platform, you probably have all had experience of this much more than we have. But our legal team, when you hand them a Californian contract, they go into absolute meltdown. And then we have to do a lot of work to be able to try and manage the risk, because we have a sector that is much more agile to working with what's needed and managing risk in a very different way. Once we throw that into a civic organisation, we're in trouble. So we're there with it. So we've announced, and we've got some really exciting announcements around our creative programme that the wonderful Maddie has led on with Stella Hall. We hope to announce, again, contracts are tied up in the legal system, but we hope to announce those this week or next. That's our site plan. It's got lots of changes coming to it, so it looks a little bit sparse at the minute. And we've got a very technical plan that sits behind this, and I think we're on version M. So we are changing. Our footprint is ever changing. I think in the context of us delivering an event of this size and scale, the feedback, also having delivered it in 2010, I think is also another pressure. The feedback and evaluation from 2010, it kind of sits with you, because it doesn't matter how much we're progressing this event, it still really is based off the expectations of how the last event was delivered. So we've had to overcome all of those expectations on an ongoing basis. The other challenge we've got, and I think the context that I wanted to really represent in this picture, is that this event is free and it's unticketed. I'll talk a little bit about some of the work that we've done with the kind of international crowd management organisation, and a guy called Eric Stewart, who is wonderful. He did the Wembley inquiry. He's done lots of inquiries across the world where there's been major incidents. But what we're seeing is we've looked at crowd trends and crowd behaviours. Tall ships, the crowd is family friendly. It's, a certain profile that is relatively low risk. But what we are seeing is if we get a really hot sunny day, because it's free, because it's unticketed, if we get this right, we're going to see a huge amount of people come to visit, because a lot of the ticketed events are not running this year because of the impact of inflation. We're seeing within the supply chain the pressures that are there, especially around security, fencing. I mean, fencing is like gold dust. And what I don't know about Portaloo is not worth knowing. So it's really, really difficult. So we've had to think about how can we resource a footprint of the site that accommodates visiting ships of significant size and scale, that provides enough of a footprint to manage an expected crowd at any one point, that has good connectivity, that is accessible, that is sustainable, that we can source enough supply to be able to manage and resource the footprint safely. And I mean, when we're thinking about all of that, this is what we've come up with. And it's 4 kilometres long. So if we start at the bottom corner and we go right up to the top corner, it's 4 kilometres. That is not without risk and challenge. So we're trying to manage that but the risk within that whole footprint is really, really difficult. And it's because the expectations of crowds, certainly for free and an unticketed event, is very unknown at the minute. So that's where a lot of that work, a lot of kind of methodology, and lots of, can you not just? I've banned people from saying it. My poor MD, if she says it, I go, no. She goes, but can you? No, I can't. Because it was, you haven't got enough money, so could you just half the footprint of the event site? And that's just the context of how some of the organisations that we're kind of myself in as a public sector organisation, the impact of money and resource and being able to deliver these things versus the pragmatism of what we need to do. And we want this to be fun. That is one of the priorities, but safety is so crucial. Just a little bit of context. Tall ships don't come. You have to get them there. So when we got this, again, a little bit naive, yay, everyone will come to Hartlepool. It was like, right, so now you've got to go and sell your soul to the devil to make sure that these ships really come. And I was like, oh, okay, so what do we do there? So, well, you pop over to Harlingen, went over to Harlingen. You take them something quite nice to remember you by. And then you tell them all the great stuff that you're going to do to make them come. And I was thinking, all right, great. So one of the team went and they said, oh, last minute, can pull together a couple of merchandise bits. You know, we've got a tin of Tic Tacs with a QR code on that'll take them to the website. Yeah, all right, that's fine. We've got a little fluffy board with a Tall Ships logo on, and yeah, okay, that's great. And a tin of Vaseline. I was like, okay, what's the rationale for that? Well, when you're at sea, you get really chapped lips. So I said, okay, yeah, is this informed? Is this? Yeah, I've spoken to quite a few people. Okay, so off we go to Harlingen. They were called pleasure packs by the end of our visit, and I was like, oh my goodness, how has this happened? Anyway, safe to say we've got more ships recruited than all 5 host ports. We'll say no more. So, sorry. Hysteria's kicked in, you can probably tell. So the commercial offer is massive. This is not funded by us in any way, shape or form. Combined Authority, so Tees Valley Combined Authority, who managed to secure funding through their events and festivals programme. And the rest of it is on income. So we've got to sell sponsorship, corporate hospitality. If anyone wants to party on a ship, let me know, we can do you a deal. We've got a trader and vendor offer, so we've got 350 pitches that we need to fill. So there's a real pressure. So this isn't just running the event safely, recruiting ships to come, recruiting trainees to go on ships. I haven't got to volunteers yet, but we'll do that one next. Sell corporate hospitality packages, get some sponsors, hit your income targets and balance your budget, and it's all going to be fine. I haven't delivered it yet. I should definitely come back in September. We'll have a better chat then. But it's happening. We've got lots of sponsors coming forward. We've got lots of people coming on board. But it's difficult. Us and Lerwick, as 2 UK ports, are really struggling around sponsorship. What a lot of organisations are able to do is donate in kind, staff time. There's a lot of stuff coming through around their corporate social responsibility and what they're willing to do. Lots of educational offers, lots of really interesting things that we're doing, but it isn't creating the level of cash flow that will help us to deliver the event. So we're having to think creatively and we're having to manage that. But we're doing lots of great stuff. This isn't just about 4 days of an event. This is telling the story, and this is our legacy piece. It's the so what questions that we're trying to make sure have that impact. So lots of work with young people, lots of work with our communities. You know, some of the pictures on here are representative, but I probably don't tell the full picture. We did some work with our holiday and food programme, which is targeting those that are eligible for free school meals. I think half, if not more, of young people in Hartlepool are eligible for free school meals. So we've done a lot of work throughout the Easter, raising the profile of tall ships to them, doing lots of activities and letting them know about the heritage of the town. You know, what is Hartlepool based upon? What is the sense of purpose and education there? We've got a mascot. It's a monkey. Just, we're on a budget, don't want to be judged. It's been a bear and a mouse already this week. So we did a naming project, and actually it's one of our biggest engagements where people came and actually they thought about the heritage of the town and they brought a lot of names. My front runner was Captain Trink O'Malley, like that one, but he's called Hartley. So after all of the wonderful, exciting names, the public voted for Hartley, so that's who it is. We've embedded it in our rhyme time. We've got our social inclusion groups. We're the front door for adult social care and our community hubs. So actually on a strength-based conversation, we're building tall ships into that in terms of what can people engage with across our programmes and activities. We've got a community garden that's been developed for tall ships so that we're going to take some, when you're trying to make a concrete port look attractive. So through the Tees Valley Nature Partnership, we've got some funding. All of the plants that we plant within the planters made from 100% sustainable materials will then be replanted in our parks and open spaces. So some really nice projects there. We've got a virtual climb the mast. So using VR so that people can climb masts, go on ships, sail the world without getting wet. So that's really positive. Some reminiscence projects in care homes. We've got an AR trail that's going to be across the site. And that's really good for the heritage because things like the dockside, when you've got the, you scan the QR code, what it'll give you is actually a reflection of where you are, but back in time. So what did the live working dock look like back in the day? So that augmented reality trail is a really positive piece of work that the team are doing. Volunteering, we've got 400 volunteers signed up. I think a few more now because we've just done some additional outreach work. Volunteers are placemakers, information givers. We've got liaison officers who will help the ships to have a great time. Again, volunteering is a wonderful thing, but there is so much process attached to it and so much to think about. So we often talk about volunteering. I think what's really challenged us is to create a better policy, a better experience, a better kind of recruitment and deployment process for volunteers. And I don't think we had that as effectively as before. So when we talk about legacy work, although it sounds very policy-based, it's really important because what it's enabled us to do is retain those volunteers across the period of time that they've signed up, because some of them have signed up for at least a year now. So we've had to have lots of engagement, lots of really positive activity for them to come and be part of. So we've got so many good skilled people as well, and then also people that are using this as a step into learning skills, employment, and people have very different motivations. Education and learning. The schools have all adopted a ship, which is brilliant, and as part of that, we're giving them lots of information about their ship. So they're looking at the heritage of the ship, where did it originate, so building it into their geography, looking at the dimensions, engaging with the captain and the crew. So it's been a really good programme. We've broadened that out to Tees Valley and also some South Durham schools who've been really interested and come forward. So there's some good educational resources and that's available on our website, and we're getting some good feedback from that. And then some of the broader heritage and culture. I certainly won't do this as much justice as my colleague Georgina Ascroft and the team, who some of you might know because they are really phenomenal in the work that they're doing. So we've got some work that we've done around shipbuilders and fisherfolk with Johnny Hanna, an illustrator. And what he's done is he's gone out into the communities, he's had a chat with people, he's gone into social clubs, working men's clubs, and just sat and talked about the heritage of the town. What do people remember about the docks? And then he's created some characters, and these characters have a level of real factual information behind them, but they're also quite fictional as well. So we've got Fisher Lady Annie, I think. That's one of them, isn't it, Maddie?
Fish Annie.
Fish Annie, yeah. So these are characters that tell a story, but that are based on, that kind of heritage of what people remember from the docks and the period of time. That's then kind of worked into a community engagement programme called Ship in a Bottle, and we're doing kind of fishes and bottles as a bit of a theme for arts and culture, and they'll be exhibited across the event site. The top one is a reanimation of our museum, the Museum of Hartlepool, and I'll talk a little bit about regeneration, how this has added an extra complication to the planning of the event. But our museum really does need some investment. It sits alongside the National Museum of the Royal Navy now, which are doing some, fabulous work, but we're not really keeping up. And when we talk about this term of levelling up, unfortunately, what we are seeing is we're starting to end up with a bit of a two-tiered approach to some of our assets across heritage and culture. And I think there's a real challenge there to be had. So we're doing some great work with colleagues across Historic England and Heritage Lottery and Arts Council to say, how do we reimagine some of our assets so we don't lose them and they're replaced by the new stuff coming through from Townsdale levelling up. So we've got waves of change that will be ready for tall ships, and that will just start that reimagination of our museum. We've got the shipwreck at Seaton, some great work with Seascapes and our archaeology team there. And we've also got HMS Trincomalee, and also there's a deep dive exhibition at the National Museum of the Royal Navy, and they're talking about the HMS Invincible. And again, that ship in particular changed the building of Royal Navy ships for the future. So really exciting stuff that we're kind of bringing out through the development of tall ships. Quick one about regeneration. Where we talk about challenges and issues, regeneration is fabulous, but doing all of this as well as an international event. And the top photo just shows you the footprint of where lots of this regeneration's taken place. That's the same footprint that we're delivering this event. So it's really difficult. We're trying to manage timelines, ensuring that we can capitalise on what can be ready for tall ships, manage what might be mid-construction for tall ships, and really think about, the footprint of Jackson's Landing. We're building a new leisure centre there. We're due to probably break ground in the autumn, but that's just going to look like a really unkept piece of land. We've got a military village on there, so we've got all the military services, and we've got lots of animation on there, but people are going to think, oh, this is, uneven ground, looking a bit rough. Haven't perhaps done as much with this as you could have done. So it's about how do we interpret all of that through some really effective storyboards, digital interactions, videos, whatever it might be. So we're managing that kind of regeneration whilst planning for the delivery of this event. So quick one on trainees. We had 5 young people go on boats in 22 just to help us understand the process. What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? And that was really interesting. When we talk about challenging the norm, there's a very different international culture. And when you start to talk to some of the international kind of operators of ships or organisations linked to tall ships, and you say safeguarding, they actually don't know what we're on about. And also, they're not very happy that we're asking, because the culture of where we work, and we're quite risk averse, it's absolutely due and appropriate in our culture. But how you manage that within an international forum is really difficult. So 5 young people went and had a wonderful experience, but the learning from that was huge. And our biggest risk probably in the whole event footprint is getting 80 young people to international countries on ships safely and back home again. There's a really good process around it, but that is one of the biggest risks in the whole programme. And that's just the 2 races that they're going to be doing this year. So just a quick one in terms of reflections. I've tried to just build in a few bits and pieces that we've had to think about that have been an issue. I don't think probably anyone's going to be surprised by anything on there, but I think timing-wise to run an international event, we couldn't have got it much worse. Post-pandemic and what that means, certainly inflation, supply chain challenges, Brexit. We've actually had some ships that have boycotted coming to UK ports because of the implications around border control. So we've had to work through that, which has been a real challenge. Certainly the war, all Russian ships have been banned from the races. Obviously it's had an impact on the Ukrainian ships. Fuel prices has undoubtedly had an impact, especially because we've got 2 Norwegian ports. And actually it's more cost effective for them to go from Norway to Lerwick back to Norway. So many things that we've had to think about. And we're getting there. I think the other one to mention is public inquiries, and I'll come on to that in a bit of reflection of how we work through our safety advisory groups. We've had the Manchester inquiry, and the recommendations that have come from that have had a significant impact on what we need to think about, especially in terms of how we engage better with local resilience forums, with our safety advisory groups, and we plan more effectively. So that has increased the burden, and I think, it's been a real balancing act of how we manage this in terms of the size and scale. We fulfil our obligations from a safety and legal point of view, and we don't stifle the creativity and opportunity that this has for Hartlepool, our economy, our visitors, our communities. So just a few little bits to finish with. Good governance, decision-making and buy-in. This has definitely been one of the best things that we could have done. I created this and people went, oh, that's too many boxes. But actually, we've operated in this way. It's had its challenges as we're stitching things together. It's had some challenges around communication and being able to manage things and run plans in parallel. But actually, what it's really helped is having a level of accountability and decision-making to make sure that things can progress as fast, especially thinking about some of the issues we've had in terms of procurement, actually breaching some of our policies, and I've had to give really clear rationale. Lots of options appraisals, lots of decisions making and report writing, but this has really helped. Pragmatism. I think in terms of having good policy and process, having really good plans, but I think pragmatism has to come into this. I think one of the things that learning coming out of COVID, I suppose that's what the animation reflects there, is we can put all of the restrictions in the world, but if we're not pragmatic with it, we're just going to stifle and actually prevent the ability to deliver a good event. So this has been really important for us, but also where there's some accountability. So just quickly on safety advisory groups, the operation of our safety advisory group before tall ships was that it was submitted, it was circulated by email to all of the relevant people around safety advisory, and there was feedback or a nil response, and then it was fed back to the event organiser. As the event organiser, I wasn't happy with that, and I said, I don't think that's adequate for you to give me what I need, because one of the things that certainly has come out of some of the most recent inquiries, safety advisory groups are not statutory, they are not decision making, but under the Civil Contingencies Act, there is an obligation for all of your civic organisations to be able to provide adequate advice, support, recommendation. So I did a big piece of review on safety advisory groups. I worked with Eric from the International Crowd Management Association. I worked with professionals right across the country. I worked with Lincolnshire, who'd done a huge review of their safety advisory, and a range of other colleagues just to see how it works. And I think sometimes we perhaps don't appreciate that we're running these things. But what I would say is for any event that you have, hold your safety advisory groups to account. It might become a process that you don't want to go through, but actually they're there to help protect you. And I think the fact that in a recent inquiry it was picked up that a safety advisory group should have made a better recommendation on something that was quite obviously a gap or a flaw that hadn't been picked up from the event organiser was really important. And I think, you know, what this has created is the Local Resilience Forum also taking more of a proactive approach. So they're now coordinating safety advisory training across the whole of the area. So anyone sitting on safety advisory groups has training. It's now picking up where there's cross-boundary issues. You know, we're running this in Hartlepool. It's undoubtedly going to have impact perhaps on highways within the north and south of what we do. So that needs to be shared. So it's a really effective process that we've been through. I'm not going to labour it too much now, but if anyone wants to know a little bit more about what we've done, then I'd really welcome that conversation. Aberdeen have been successful to host tall ships in the future. They're doing a big review of their safety advisory group, so they're coming and working with us and understand the process we've been through to see if it helps them as well. The right team, I think that's pretty obvious. But when I say team, I think the fact that it says internal and external support, as a council, we've had to really acknowledge we cannot do everything ourselves. I think it was said in the opening welcome. As councils, we are at a point where we absolutely cannot do everything, and that partnership working, that stakeholder engagement, that appreciation of where our limitations are has been really critical. And we've got safety and site management, we've outsourced that. So although we're managing that process, we've brought the right skills, the right expertise and the right support on board. We've also appointed somebody who was a specialist, had worked the Olympics, Commonwealth Games, other large cultural and sporting events to bring some really good project management to the event. And then we've built a team around that. There's been gaps and challenges, but we've worked through that as we've gone. And just to finish off, I think with all of this, it's managing expectations. Working in a political environment, politics has played a huge part. There's been expectations. I ended up on BBC News having to respond to one of our opposition politicians saying that we should have given all local traders a kind of free or subsidised pitch for business, but the viability then of our pitches in terms of income generation, the inequality that would have created across the Tees Valley when the combined authority, who are our main investor, are telling us that 50% of businesses should be Tees Valley based, and then all of the other things in between. So even just on that one topic, the expectation was huge, and all of that has to be managed and dealt with, and it's been really challenging. And I think that's it. I don't know if it's worth it yet. I think it will be. I'm really excited. It's going to be fabulous. Please come along. And hope to see you there.
Thanks very much, Gemma. I'm amazed you're still standing. And I actually also think you got off lightly on the whole public choice for your mascot name. You could have, it could have been like Monkey McMonkey Face.
It was in there. It was in there.
Right? Inevitable. Okay, very great. So I'd like to now welcome Bill and Pat to speak about Hadrian's Wall 1900.
Afternoon all. So, last year was, according to most accounts, the 1900th anniversary of the commencement of the building of Hadrian's Wall, now a World Heritage Site. So we thought we'd better celebrate, because it's a long way to 2000. So we thought we'd do 1900. We ran this as a year-long festival from Hadrian's birthday on the 24th of January to the 23rd of December, the end of the Roman Winter Festival of Saturnalia. It's across the whole of the World Heritage Site. So that's from here in South Shields, our Bay of Roman Fort, which you've heard of earlier, right across the wall, and then down the coast to Sen House, and indeed even off the slide you can see there, about a 150-mile long festival. So not the smallest thing we've ever done. When I say we, I'm talking about the Hadrian's Wall Partnership Board. We were looking to build on the success of a project done in 2017, Hadrian's Cavalry, which the map you can see is from, looking at celebrating the anniversary, but trying to do something different. So what we wanted to do was twofold. One was to just put Hadrian's Wall back on the world map, as always, especially what we hoped was going to be post-pandemic. It sort of was by the end of this festival. So we need to do that international tourism bit and attract people to the area. But far more importantly was to make it a very local festival as well and really engage communities with Hadrian's Wall. Tell you what, raising funding in a pandemic is an interesting challenge. We, in the end, raised just under £900,000, you can see in that slide, from a number of different funders. So it's quite a mosaic with different parts of Hadrian's Wall holding different parts, but all coming together to contribute to one festival. So that gives you an idea of the complexity of it. So the first thing we had to do was recruit a fantastic freelance team. Maddie Morn, you're getting a lot of mentions are you sponsoring us? So a fantastic freelance team. Again, point to make, people think, oh, Hadrian's Wall, a nice big World Heritage Site, must have loads of people. That's the team that put the festival on, held by a steering group of which I was a member. Everyone on that was pretty much only part-time, a couple of days a week doing the festival. So the staff resource was not huge. And I think, Gemma, your point about managing expectations, that's a real challenge. People assume somehow there's this big monolithic team doing it all, and it's a few people putting it together insanely well. I want to start by looking at the international dimension of it and the publicity we got. As you can see, the team is standing in front of our launch cake. Hadrian's birthday, have a cake. This isn't difficult. I put the photo up to show you it really was a cake. It really was a delicious cake. When we launched the start of the festival, we launched at the Great North Museum. We had to restrict numbers because we were still in heavy COVID restriction land, folks. So our festival began with that struggle. Nevertheless, we generated a lot of publicity, not least for the magnificent cake itself. But we got, I think really the press got behind the idea of 1,900 years of a World Heritage Site. So my favourite one was National Geographic Traveller listed the festival as one of the top 30 things to do in the world in 2023. So you can't really do much better internationally than hitting a mark like that. Plenty of other things. Well, we had 2 TV programs come and do specials from the wall. So Songs of Praise and Countryfile posted to the wall. I managed to get Countryfile to visit Industrial Wall's End. Now, I think that's good going personally anyway. So we tried to have a series of big headline moments within the festival, because sustaining a festival over a year is tough. Obviously, Her Majesty shamelessly piggybacked off Hadrian, and we were the centrepiece of the Platinum Jubilee beacons. So we got dispensation to light our beacons slightly later than everyone else, so that we would be the even new shot as part of the festival. Now, that is a very big deal, and that took a lot of work by Jez Light and coordinating with the Palace's pageant master. But again, really worth it for just putting Hadrian's Wall on the map as a very significant piece of heritage in the UK. Colleagues at English Heritage pulled off this stunner by Arthur's Morag Myerscough. This is a reconstruction of the North Gate at Housesteads. Absolutely blinking fabulous. Standout piece of art, but also really great community engagement. So communities in the area of the wall were invited to take part in the project, and all the words you would be able to read if my photo was better. They are all the words that the people use to describe the wall from their own experience. So it's a really great, standout, international, stunning piece of art that's really grounded in its communities and reflective of those communities. It did cause some controversy, and I think most people, when they got to it and climbed up it and had the view the Romans would have had at Housesteads, were completely won over. A real stunner. Another headline was the fantastic Apertura, 1,900 wind chimes. See what we did there? Beautiful reflective piece, very different from the kind of things that normally happen on the wall. I've just realized I've got pretty much no photos of people dressed up as Romans, because that's not what this festival was about. It was celebrating the World Heritage Site in all its aspects. Aperture was fantastic. A challenge of a project, it's fair to say. We were hit by supply chain issues, so that caused us some problems. When we finally did get it ready to launch, Her Majesty died on the day we were going to launch, so that was kind of that, really. But it was a fantastic thing. Again, a lot of community engagement with it, and various communities on the wall have now got sets of the chimes each. So the artwork, when it's broken up and finished with, the chimes have gone back to those communities. So again, international focus, but rooted in the community. To move that on, Vindolander. Vindolander put out a call for bunting. We wanted to make 1,900 little pieces of bunting to celebrate the wall. Put the call out, and the response was truly international. In the end, it ended up with over 2,500 bunting flags from all over the world. People wanting to be part of the festival, wanting to contribute to it, wanting to play, to do their bit, really. So a really, really stunning project there. In terms of projects generally, we set a target of, I think, about 400 events for the festival. Well, did we reach it? 1,500? So we blew that one out of the water. Fantastic number of events. So many things happened. At another level, the artist Karen McDougall got funding from Arts Council herself for a project called Frontier Voices, producing artworks with communities right along the wall, and indeed with partners in Germany and the Netherlands as well. So linking our World Heritage Site to its place in the wider frontiers of the Roman Empire World Heritage Site. The festival inspired other people. This young man, inspired by the 1900s festival, set out to be the first person ever to do the trail by wheelchair. Absolutely incredible. So it's wonderful to think that our festival got someone to think, yeah, I'm going to give that a go. We had a lot of fun too. You can see here Hadrian having a bath at Ravenglass Bathhouse on the west coast. Looks lovely, doesn't it? He had that bath on his birthday, 24th of January. Tough old emperor. The other thing you can see, people joined in with the centre of the festival. So some of you may know every year, there's a great time row. All the rowing boats compete and raise money for charity. And last year they gave it a rowing theme in recognition of the 1900th anniversary. So a lot of fun was had by groups at different levels, as well as the big stuff that you'd see in museums, all the exhibitions, etc. I can say also, we are an internationally award-winning festival. We won this award from the South Asian element of UNESCO. So in recognition of the way our festival was produced, both across all the partners and with community engagement. So that was nice. Let's talk a little bit more about communities. Jodie, thank you, by the way, because NLHF, of course, funded an important aspect of the festival, which was we were given a community grant spot. So for those of you who don't know this, when you're running a project, it's possible for you to have a grant spot through NLHF, which you can then award to community groups taking part in your festival. So we had a sum of £70,000, which we awarded to just over 20 projects, 22 projects along the line of the wall as part of the festival. I'm going to introduce Pat a little later on to talk about one of those projects. The projects were incredible. One of my other favourites, apart from Pat, that is my favourite, was the Zigzag Project, which was done by a mental health charity. And they put together an exhibition of disability in their own world, just put on in the shop front in Hexham. It is now going to tour most of the Hadrian Wall sites over the next year or so. So again, a fantastic legacy for a community group. And that sense was being talked about earlier. It's actually working in partnership with people much more clearly, which has come through as part of this festival. Other projects, the Brough by Sand Church you see there, which Pat will talk about in a bit. Another group, Refugee and Asylum Seekers in Newcastle, did a fantastic project where they actually wrote a song about Hadrian's Wall. I'm not going to sing it, relax. I'm going to paraphrase it very horribly. I thought this was just incredible for me. And a point about how we as heritage professionals sometimes need to see our monuments through other people's eyes. So we worked with Refugee and Asylum Seekers out into the wall. They had a great visit, really enjoyed it, wrote a fantastic song, which to cruelly paraphrase and unfairly, but it made me think about the wall differently, was call that a World Heritage Site, we can still live in ours. You know, which is a really different perspective of a Brit dealing with the World Heritage Site and thinking 3 stones in the field is incredible. Spoiler, it is incredible. So, when we were setting up the festival, I used to show this slide. This is what we were saying would be the benefits of the festival. So, did we succeed? So, community are more engaged with the World Heritage Site, better able to utilise it for their benefit. I believe 1,500 events say we succeeded. Obviously, time will tell if we get back the rest of the evaluation. Community as brand ambassadors, more people able to say, yes, this is our wall, we're proud of it. It means X, Y, or Z to us, as opposed to it's a toy for the archaeologists. Major international publicity, well, I think we got that, you know, National Geographic Traveller, TV programmes and what have you. Attraction for the staycation market, you can tell COVID was on when I wrote that, can't you? This is an important, sort of slightly nerdy one. Hadrian's Wall is not run by one body. All the different partners pull together, the local authorities, museum bodies, heritage bodies along the wall, we all work together. I think this festival has helped to strengthen that mode of partnership delivery. You saw the funding side at the start of my presentation. So helping people think more about how we can collaborate to make our World Heritage Site really sing and make a great difference to the communities we serve. I think you succeeded with that. We have a 10-year investment strategy being built, and this will be a great foundation for that strategy. I think we have a much better sense of the broader stories of the frontier. It is not just Romans. It pains me as a Roman archaeologist to say this sometimes, but it really isn't just Romans. It is a 1,900-year story of the history of our region. And I think we've developed skills and networks across everyone. Our challenge is a legacy. We have an improved website. We've got workshops and activity packs available. So stuff that was created for the festival is available for community groups to continue to work with to engage with Hadrian's Wall. I say proof of strong partnership working. We're hopefully working on a publication around that at the moment. I think communities are better engaged. And we have generally diversified the audience base beyond those people who are interested in Roman heritage. We have challenges, and those are obvious, really. Maintaining community engagement after a festival like this. Not just walking away and going, well, that was nice, now back to the day job. You know, we really, the day job is community engagement as far as I'm concerned. Continuing to diversify audiences, so don't just lapse back into the Roman story. And I think that continued focus on working wall-wide and telling that story. Anyway, that's it from me. So it's my very great pleasure to introduce Pat Poinen, who is chair of the North East of England African Community Association and the beneficiary of one of the grants from the project. Over to you.
I have this problem.
Me too.
In church, I have a little box that I stand on, you know. So.
It's just that
Yeah.
one, Steve.
Thank you, Bill. Where is he? Oh. For that introduction, and good afternoon to everyone here. My name is Poinen, and I'm the chair of the North East of England African Community Association, NEEACA for short. So NEEACA has been in existence since 1997, and I've been the chair for the past 2 years. This is my 3rd year. Hadrian's Wall, Hadrian 1900 project, gave us the opportunity to visit a village in Cumbria, Brough by Sands. We were able to apply for a grant. We applied for a small grant and we were successful. So thank you to the funders for allowing us to have that opportunity to go and visit the site in Cumbria. In 2016, NEEACA was invited to go to Brough by Sands when David Olusoga was filming the first program about Black British history. And the reason why we were invited was because obviously we were Black, we were, you know, of African descent, but also because stationed there was African soldiers in 3 AD. So we're claiming our place on that site, on Hadrian's Wall, as Africans in the diaspora. So on the 2nd of December, we were able to make a trip from Newcastle to Brough by Sands, and Bill accompanied us. We had a coach full of people. We left quite early in the morning. There was about 22 or 23 of us. And bearing in mind, we're going to a little village in Cumbria that is totally white. And we're a coach full of majority Black people. But they are our friends. They welcomed us. And we have a great relationship with them. So as we traveled along the wall, Bill gave us a running commentary of all the things that were there, and yeah. And so we went along to meet our friends in Cumbria. They gave us a wonderful lunch, and we had a wonderful time sharing fellowship and talking about the history of their village. So, Hannah Beale, you can see yourself up there. And we had a wonderful, wonderful time. The Bishop of Carlisle was there. And the reason why we were there is because they were dedicating a stone to honor the African soldiers who had been there in 3 AD. And that's why we were invited to go along. So it took a while in planning, but the funding enabled us to visit. So this is us visiting the village hall where we had lunch. This is a group of us with our banner that we made because we don't have any money, and so we became creative, and we made that banner for our organization. Now, these are the 2 people who really invited us and have been instrumental in ensuring that the rest of the world know about those African soldiers. The gentleman there is the vicar at the St. Michael's Church, and Carolyn is one of the villagers who has been there. Her family have been there forever. And when my colleague Beverly said to her, what's happening? What am I not? No. So this is the stone that says Moorish troops in Roman fort here. I can't read properly what it says. Bring African culture. So this is St. Michael's Church, which is built on the site of where the Roman fort was. And it was a wonderful, wonderful day, really, because the local school children came. There was at least 150 school children there. And how do you make changes in the world without influencing and changing the lives of young people and children? And so when those children came along, their parents came along, their grandparents came along, and that's how we initiate change. So this is there you can see the bishop just, maybe if you do the next slide. Yeah. So this is the Bishop of Carlisle, and he is dedicating the stone there in memory of the African soldiers. The children, they were from nursery age to, whatever year they leave school at primary school. But they were all there. They were so excited to be there. And it's part of history. It's the heritage of that village that they were witnessing that day. So it was really, really wonderful. And this is just to show you that the amount of people that were there. Because of that grant, we were able to touch at least 250 people. A little organization as NEEACA working with Hadrian 1900 project to be able to do this. It was just amazing. So this is Mr. Tony Swada. He is 92 years of age. And he was teaching the children to do an African song and dance. And if I had the video, you would see him jumping about, and nobody would believe that he was 92. Now, when we were there with David Alushoga in 2016, he taught the children then to do that dance and sing the song, and we all had to do our little wiggle. So that's Tony, who is our founder. This is just some members of the village and Gerald, who's a member of NEEACA. But it was just absolutely a wonderful, wonderful day in the church. I would urge you all to visit the site in Cumbria and visit the church. They're wonderful people. They're very hospitable. And the history is written in the church. And I do believe, if I can remember, they told me that one of the kings lay in state there. I can't remember his name, but yeah. So it has a great history. And it was a wonderful, wonderful day for us and for the villagers there. So thank you all very, very much. Oh, I forgot to say something. I just wanted to draw your attention to some work that was done during the pandemic by a group of volunteers, by members of NEEACA, members of Historic England, and TWAM, Bill Griffiths was on that. And I'd like to draw your attention to a website called africanlivesnortheast.co.uk, and I think we would ask you to send that out later on. And African Lives in Northern England that website has a series of projects on it. African Lives and Stories of Service, which there's a display in the museum, in the Discovery Museum. There's also access to school resources, and that was funded by Historic England. So that's there for you to access. We also produced a booklet called From Roman Times, African Lives from Roman Times to the 21st Century. And you can now download that booklet from the website. So it's well worth reading. We've done 2 calendars in the past featuring African lives in Northern England. And we've just completed city centre walks about African lives in Newcastle. So all those subjects are on the website for you to access and use. So please feel free to use it. Thank you.
Fantastic, fascinating. The archaeologist in me is absolutely thrilled about that stone because it will save us fighting the Daily Mail lots of battles in future about whether or not there were. So I'd like to introduce Jules Brown from Historic England to talk about conservation zones.
There's the clicker. I realise I'm at every conference. I think I appear to be before tea. I'm very sorry about that. So I will rattle through this. I'm Jules Brown from Historic England. The wording seems to have stretched itself out somehow. We are the government's historic environment champion. Our mission is to improve people's lives. Get that. Our mission is to improve people's lives by championing and protecting the historic environment. Please do look at our future strategy. I'm sure these slides are going to be sent out. Pretty much everything on this page is clickable. Everything on every slide is clickable. It'll take you to lots of juicy information, so please do. I'm going to talk to you, I think the theme of this session was from the international to the hyperlocal. I'm going to talk to you about the local, and I'm going to talk to you about conservation areas. Hands up if you knew we were in a listed building. Wow, cracking, look at that. Hands up if you think we might be in a conservation area. We are in one right now. And I think that's an interesting illustration. There are 10,000 conservation areas. Everything from the energy of Blackpool waterfront to the nestled charm of Berwick. Yet they are quite invisible sometimes. You might imagine you might be in one, but finding out whether you are in one is perhaps much more difficult than knowing where your average listed building might be. There's 300 in the northeast. They are a wide variety of places. There are 11 in South Tyneside. We are in one of them right now. And the important thing about conservation areas is that they are special. By definition, they are special in terms of their architecture and in terms of their history. We can't designate them unless they're special. However, they are also perhaps the most everyday piece of our historic environment. This is where people live, where they work, where they play, where they grow up, where they die, where they are happy, where they are sad. All of our lives are lived in some of the most special environments and townscapes of our region. And understanding more about our conservation areas and bringing them to the fore can bring benefits to people who live in these places. So conservation areas are actually about people, and it is the people that have created the history that is special enough to designate. They are rich with history that can bring inspiration for cultural activity. They are about characterful places of wide variety that can tell a story, that have roots, and that can generate place pride. So I'm going to talk to you quickly about some of the traditional established ideas that we encourage people to engage in conservation areas with, and then a few new ideas that we've been working with to do with high street conservation areas in recent years. So some of the things we encourage people to do with conservation areas is to get involved in planning. Say something useful about proposals and development things that are happening in your conservation area, understand how development and architecture works in a historic setting, get involved in writing down why these areas are special. Most conservation areas have a written document called an appraisal, which tells you why it is special. Some of them have been very successfully written by or with local people. The North Shields one, the Fish Quay, won an award. It was that good. You can get involved with managing change in your conservation area, doing some surveys for your local conservation officer, do some research, take some photos, do a place check. Follow that link, it's a fascinating project, place check. And you can form groups to have a valid voice in your conservation area, to express an opinion, to do work, and to have an independent voice. The picture on the left there is Berwick. That's quite an old photograph now, but Berwick has got a long-standing conservation area group and a new one just about to be started in Bishop Auckland. The picture is our new book, plug, our new book on Bishop Auckland, which is published next month. Do buy a copy. So far, so town planning. One of the things that we move on from is to actually get communities to act in their conservation area, to do things, do a thing. I couldn't find a more excitingly named body than Brighton Wrighton. Isn't that great? Brighton Wrighton are a great group. They've been going for several years now, and they have a heritage group within Brighton Wrighton as a project, and they do practical work to conserve. This is the pinfold. Thank you. The pinfold in Brighton Wrighton, which has been conserved by now. So, these are traditional ways that you can engage in your conservation area. But we're now starting to think more ambitiously about how conservation areas can connect people to their history and can bring much bigger rewards to the community. Outcomes for people, as well as outcomes for the historic environment. Things that can benefit economic life in that conservation area, that can benefit social inclusion in that conservation area, that can benefit environmental sustainability, cultural activity, community well-being, health. All of these things can be approached from the topic of place history. And conservation areas are kind of an intense boundary within which you can experiment with that. So we're starting to look at ways of actively participating much more constructively in conservation areas. This is an internal diagram, but I've snuck it in. I'm not sure you're meant to read it, but do have a look. We're trying to move people up a ladder of participation, away from just being audiences to being participatory, away from listening to us and us listening to them so that they share their knowledge, experience, and insight. And not to have heritage done to them, but done with them or by them entirely, moving people up the scale. So one way we've been experimenting with that in recent years is through high street conservation areas. High streets are a big topic in government at the minute. Towns rather than cities, towns rather than villages. And within towns, it's about the high street. We all know and have experienced the decline of the high street. So we've had high street heritage action zones, 68 of them around England, 12 of them in northeastern Yorkshire, which is the region I work in. The 3 in actually there's only 2 in the new northeast, Hexham and North Shields. There's Middlesbrough as well, but of course they're not northeast anymore, are they? So Middlesbrough and North Shields are the ones that we've been working on. And we're trying to find ways of drawing outcomes for the whole place, for people who live there, by working with the history and the architecture, which is so special in these towns. And you can see what we're doing is investing £95 million on 3 things: capital, community, and culture. And it's the weight of that. Yes, we're spending a lot of money on building repairs and the like, but the 2 strongest themes in terms of policy are community and culture. We know how, in Historic England, we know how to invest in buildings. That's the easy bit. What we're now trying to do as a national agency is to try and draw out what more we can do to do with the cultural life in these areas. So when you get these slides, click on the video link, and that's a nice little animation which tells you all about high street heritage action zones. And I'm going to say a little bit more now about the cultural theme, because we've had a bespoke pot of money, £7.4 million, which is a huge amount of money to spend on a cultural programme, and it's fantastic that we've had it in England. And some of that money came from Arts Council and from the Heritage Fund too. And this video, which I think is possibly going to be played in one of the breaks afterwards, yes, will give you a flavour of what we've been doing to try and draw out cultural activity, cultural enterprise, cultural life, cultural growth, using the stories of our high street conservation areas. Now, this is just high streets. Imagine if we had that amount of funding and ambition on seaside conservation areas, rural conservation areas, pretty much any theme. Drill down into that depth of history, roots, character and culture, and explore it for the benefit of local people. There's so much opportunity, I think, in this. I am going to show you one quick video. It's only a minute. And it is two examples. I mentioned Hexham and North Shields. Sorry, I mentioned Hexham and North Shields. This is just two examples of the work that the Cultural Consortium in both of those places have been working on, led by Queen's Hall Arts in Hexham, and one example by the North Shields Heritology Project, which is a fantastic outfit in North Shields. I don't think Eleanor's in the room, but there's Eleanor. I think many of you will know her, leading a group there. But I'm going to show you the Hexham thing. Video, please work video. No sound. Sound.
For me, it's about a celebration of imagination and belief, which is fantastic.
About bringing new people into Hexham and discovering artists' ideas.
And it brings the community together in Hexham. It means Hexham is not just a place, it's a community, it's a lovely spirit.
Everybody is going to notice these things and then want to see more of them. I just think it's really exciting.
So that was done. Can I go back to this? Yes, I can. There we are. That was done just after lockdown as a way of using history to literally reanimate the high street after people stopped going. And it was a fantastic opportunity that took just motifs, just ideas about the history of the place, and developed a very exciting opportunity to bring the street back to life. So that's just one example. I have some takeaways for you. Get that for a slide heading, right? Things to take away. When we're thinking now about cultural investment in places that are conservation areas, and they need not actually be conservation areas. You could apply this to other historic places too, but we're thinking about conservation areas here in historic England. These are three things to think about. See if you can bring to life your conservation area. Use the historic spaces and places as a meaningful backdrop to programming and other performance and other programming. Tell the story. Find out from local people what the exciting stories are about these places. How can you use the area's character, its identity, its history to inspire cultural engagement, to inspire cultural enterprise? Each one of these is a link to an idea. I chose something from Berwick for the top. The middle one is another North East Heritology project about North Shields. And the bottom one is an example of how what we're interested in as well is reducing risk to our buildings. These buildings are recyclable. We can reuse buildings in conservation areas to help challenge the climate crisis. We want to rebuild, to reuse historic buildings. So reducing risk to the built fabric of our conservation areas should, in our view, be part of investment plans for cultural growth in our conservation areas. And the picture there is of the Culture and Creative Zone in Newcastle, which is based on Clayton Street. So they are my takeaways, and I think I'm just about in time.